A new NPR investigation reveals the Justice Department withheld portions of the Jeffrey Epstein files that contain allegations involving President Trump, including material tied to claims that Mr. Trump sexually abused a minor and that some pages mentioning him were removed from the public record. Democrats on the House Oversight Committee called that out today, saying the DOJ's withholding of information could amount to a crime. For more on that and the surrounding fallout, we're joined now by Julie K. Brown, investigative reporter for the Miami Herald, whose reporting helped expose much of the Epstein network. Julie, welcome back to the program. It's great to have you.
Thank you.
I want to start with this NPR reporting that the Justice Department withheld some Epstein files related to allegations that President Trump sexually abused a minor, which we should say the White House denies. What stands out to you about it?
Well, I think what stands out is that we don't have the reports, even though we know they exist. This stems from an interview that they conducted that came out of a tip to the FBI about this woman who has said that when she was 13, that she was sexually assaulted by Donald Trump.
Hello guys, Adam speaking now. Let me ask you something, and I want you to really think about it. If you had absolutely nothing to hide, if your connection to one of the most notorious sex traffickers in modern history was as innocent as you claim, would you fight for months to block the release of documents about that connection? Would your Justice Department quietly remove files from a public database after they were already posted for the world to see?
Donald Trump's Epstein turmoil. The Department of Justice has released their final tranche of 3 million files related to Jeffrey Epstein, revealing more details about his cozy relationships with powerful people. The files include thousands of new text messages between Epstein and Trump ally Steve Bannon, suggesting that their known friendship was, quote, deeper, chummier, and more expansive than previously known. In the texts, the two frequently discussed foreign affairs and the Trump White House.
Would dozens of pages related to allegations against you mysteriously go missing from a legally mandated transparency release? Pages that investigative journalists can prove exist based on your own government's internal tracking numbers? Because that is exactly what is happening right now with Donald Trump and the Jeffrey Epstein files, and it is getting worse by the day.
Also included in the files are about 2 hours of never-before-seen interview footage of Epstein, all conducted by Steve Bannon. And we know that Bannon filmed Epstein for over 15 hours, sometime in the years leading up to Epstein's conviction and death, in an attempt to rehab Epstein's reputation. Here's Epstein talking about his first time in jail back in 2008 on charges of soliciting prostitution.
I was in a place what's called the Special Housing Unit, which is for the roughest, toughest, meanest people.
Did it strike you at the time of the mess you had made of your life and put you in a position, or you had put yourself in that position?
No.
You cannot tell me sometime during that day you did not have that conversation with yourself of how the did I do this to myself?
Did I find it amazing that I was there? That's a
not amazing, and I don't want to say it's not funny. Oh, I thought it was.
I wasn't funny.
Right.
Here's what we know. Congress passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act with overwhelming bipartisan support in November 2025. Trump signed it into law, something his supporters celebrated as proof he had nothing to fear. The law required the Department of Justice to release all unclassified records related to Epstein and his co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell. The deadline was December 19, 2025. Since then, more than 3 million pages have been released. Over 2,000 videos, nearly 200,000 images. This is the largest document dump related to a sex trafficking investigation in American history. FBI memos, internal DOJ emails, prosecutor notes, flight manifests, witness interviews, court filings, photographs, communications spanning decades, and Trump's name appears hundreds, possibly more than 1,000 times throughout these materials. Now, to be absolutely clear, nobody is saying these documents prove Trump participated in Epstein's abuse. That distinction matters, and we're going to be fair about it. But what these files do show, and this is what Trump's team does not want you to focus on, is that his relationship with Epstein was far deeper, far more entangled and far more troubling than anything he has ever publicly admitted. The story he has told the American people about Jeffrey Epstein does not match the story the government's own files tell. And that gap, that contradiction, is what is haunting his presidency right now. And it's not just what is in the files that is raising alarms, it's what is missing. An NPR investigation published just days ago found that the Justice Department has withheld or removed dozens of pages from the public Epstein database, pages specifically related to sexual abuse allegations against the president. NPR reviewed multiple sets of unique serial numbers called Bates stamps that are stamped onto every document. They found gaps, pages that are cataloged internally by the DOJ, pages that the tracking numbers prove should exist but never appeared in the public record. NBC News independently confirmed that the DOJ has not released summaries and notes from 3 separate FBI interviews with a woman who accused both Epstein and Trump of sexual abuse. Here's what makes this truly explosive. The Epstein Files Transparency Act explicitly prohibits withholding documents on the basis of embarrassment, reputational harm, or political sensitivity, including to any government official or public figure. The law could not be clearer. And yet, here we are. Pages are missing. Files have been temporarily removed and then quietly restored weeks later without any explanation. And the Justice Department is now formally reviewing whether it wrongly withheld FBI files containing allegations against the president. The Washington Post reported that the DOJ itself acknowledged the review is underway. That means even the department responsible for releasing the files is now admitting something may have gone wrong. Both Republicans and Democrats are now investigating. The Republican chair of the House Oversight Committee, James Comer, has pledged to look into the missing files. The top Democrat on the committee, Robert Garcia, sent a formal letter to Attorney General Pam Bondi demanding answers about why pages related to allegations against the president were withheld. This is bipartisan. Both sides want answers. Meanwhile, Trump's approval numbers continue their downward slide. His net approval sits at roughly 13 to 14. On the economy, 18. On inflation, a staggering 32. And the Epstein issue has become one of the rare topics that splits Trump from his own base, with even MAGA supporters demanding full transparency and growing frustrated with the pace and completeness of the releases. So let's walk through what the files actually show about Trump and Epstein. The biggest revelation so far involves the flight logs. During his 2024 campaign, Trump publicly claimed he was never on Epstein's plane. He said it clearly, without qualification. The files tell a very different story. A newly surfaced DOJ email from a federal prosecutor in the Southern District of New York, dated January 2020, flagged that flight records showed Trump had flown on Epstein's private jet far more often than anyone previously knew. The prosecutor wrote, and this is from an internal government email now part of the public record, that the flight records reflected Trump traveled on Epstein's jet many more times than previously reported or than prosecutors were even aware of. The email said Trump was listed as a passenger on at least 8 flights between 1993 and 1996. On at least 4 of those flights, Ghislaine Maxwell was also on board. On one flight in 1993, the only 2 passengers listed were Trump and Epstein, just the 2 of them alone on that plane. On another flight, the 3 passengers listed were Epstein, Trump, and a redacted individual who was 20 years old at the time. 2 other flights included women whose names were redacted, women prosecutors specifically identified as potential witnesses in the Maxwell case. The prosecutor who flagged these mentions said they did so because the legal team did not want any of this to be a surprise down the road. Think about what that language means. Federal prosecutors, people whose job is to evaluate the significance of evidence, looked at those flight records and concluded Trump's presence on Epstein's jet was significant enough to warrant a heads-up to their colleagues. Flying on someone's jet is not a crime. The flights occurred during a period when Trump and Epstein were known to be socializing in New York and Palm Beach elite circles. But the contradiction between Trump's flat public denial and the official flight records is devastating. If he lied about the flights, what else did he lie about? The files contain much more than just flight logs. Court records from the Ghislaine Maxwell litigation, now unsealed, reveal Trump was identified as Doe 174 among roughly 170 John Does in earlier filings. The judge in that case noted Trump's association with Epstein, and Maxwell had already been widely reported and discussed during Maxwell's criminal trial. Being a named Doe doesn't mean someone committed a crime, but it means their name came up enough times in the context of a sex trafficking investigation to warrant formal identification in the court record. One Epstein victim told investigators that Maxwell once presented her to Trump at a gathering in New York, and later suggested to Trump that the young woman was available. The woman told the FBI nothing happened between her and Trump, but the memo shows Maxwell was actively trying to connect young women in Epstein's orbit to the man who is now president. There are also newly released details about a 14-year-old girl who was taken to Mar-a-Lago in 1994. According to a court document, she said she was there with Epstein, who introduced her to Trump. Epstein reportedly elbowed Trump playfully and said, referring to the girl, "This is a good one, right?" Trump smiled and nodded in agreement. The girl said she felt uncomfortable but was too young at the time to understand why. Then there are the FBI investigative files. The released documents include a list of allegations and tips the FBI received related to Trump, many from unverified sources. The DOJ issued a statement acknowledging some documents contain untrue and sensationalist claims submitted right before the 2020 election. The White House has pointed to that statement repeatedly, arguing Trump has been totally exonerated. But here's where it gets complicated. An NPR investigation found the Justice Department withheld more than 50 pages of FBI interviews and notes from conversations with a woman who accused Trump of sexual abuse when she was a minor, allegedly around 1983. According to documents in the public database, the woman claimed Epstein introduced her to Trump around age 13 and that Trump subsequently assaulted her. The allegation appeared in an internal FBI list of claims and in a DOJ PowerPoint detailing prominent names in the Epstein investigation. The FBI interviewed this accuser 4 times according to witness material logs released under the Transparency Act. But only one of those 4 interviews was made public, and that one does not mention Trump at all. The other 3, along with dozens of additional pages, are either missing from the database or were never uploaded. NPR cross-referenced 3 separate sets of Bates stamp serial numbers and found gaps corresponding to pages that should exist but don't appear anywhere in the public record. NBC News independently confirmed the same finding. Now, we need to be clear. The existence of an allegation in an FBI file does not mean it's true. FBI files contain all manner of tips, rumors, and unverified claims. The DOJ has specifically said these particular claims are unfounded and false. Trump has denied all wrongdoing, and no criminal charges have ever been filed against him in connection with any Epstein-related conduct. All of that is true. But what matters, and what has triggered bipartisan congressional outcry, is why those specific pages are missing from a legally mandated public release. The Transparency Act says in plain language the government cannot withhold documents to protect someone from embarrassment or reputational harm. The DOJ says any withheld documents are either privileged, duplicates, or relate to ongoing investigations. But the DOJ has refused to specify which exemption applies to the missing Trump-related pages. When Representative Robert Garcia went to view the unredacted files at the Justice Department, he found the missing interviews were not available there either. They appear to have been pulled from the viewing copies that members of Congress are supposed to access under the law. The situation got even more complicated when NPR found that some documents were posted to the public database on January 30th, then quietly removed days later, then restored weeks after that with zero explanation. One file temporarily removed contained an interview with a woman's mother who recalled hearing a prince and Donald Trump visited Epstein's house, which made the mother think that if such important people were there, Epstein couldn't possibly be a criminal. Meanwhile, Ghislaine Maxwell, serving 20 years for sex trafficking, is currently seeking clemency from Trump. The woman convicted of helping Epstein traffic young girls is asking the president for a pardon, while files related to that same president's interactions with Epstein's victims are disappearing from a legally mandated public database. The conflict of interest is staggering. The broader document trove has also revealed connections between Epstein and people in Trump's current inner circle. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick arranged a family trip to Epstein's island. Trump's Navy Secretary, John Phelan, appeared on 2 Epstein flight manifests from 2006. Epstein's own emails show him strategizing in 2011 with someone who appears to be Maxwell about how to deal with new allegations from a woman who claimed she worked at Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort when she was 15. Let me break this down. Point 1. The flight logs have definitively demolished Trump's claim he was never on Epstein's plane. 8 flights between 1993 and 1996, at least 4 with Maxwell on board, 1 with just Trump and Epstein alone, another with Trump, Epstein, and a 20-year-old woman. These aren't allegations from anonymous tipsters. They're official flight records federal prosecutors flagged in internal DOJ communications, because they showed Trump's involvement with Epstein was far more extensive than anyone understood. Point 2. The missing pages have created a transparency crisis bigger than the Epstein story itself. The entire purpose of the Transparency Act was to give the public access to what the government knew. Congress passed it with bipartisan support specifically because people had lost faith. Powerful figures were being held accountable. Trump signed it into law. Yet when it comes to files mentioning allegations against Trump, dozens of pages are missing. Documents have been posted, removed, and restored without explanation. Both Republicans and Democrats are now demanding answers. Point 3. The connections between Epstein's network and Trump's current administration raise conflict of interest questions that cannot be ignored. Ghislaine Maxwell is seeking clemency from the same president whose name appears throughout the Epstein files. Trump's Navy Secretary appeared on Epstein flight manifests. His Commerce Secretary arranged trips to Epstein's island. And the Justice Department, which reports to Trump's Attorney General, is the same entity deciding which files get released and which get withheld. Point 4. Regardless of what the files ultimately prove about Trump's personal conduct, the political damage is accumulating in ways his team cannot control. This is one of the rare issues that fractures Trump's own coalition. His base wanted the Epstein files released, drain the swamp, expose the elites, and now those same files are turning the spotlight on Trump himself. His supporters are watching the administration they elected appear to fight to keep certain pages out of public view. Here is the bottom line. Donald Trump once called Jeffrey Epstein a terrific guy. He told New York Magazine Epstein liked beautiful women as much as he did, many of them on the younger side. He later changed his story, claimed he barely knew Epstein, said they had a falling out, insisted he was never on Epstein's plane. The files show he flew on that plane at least 8 times. They show Maxwell was there for at least 4 of those trips. They show victims and witnesses describing interactions with Trump he has never publicly acknowledged. They show the FBI took at least 1 allegation seriously enough to interview the accuser 4 separate times. And the files that might tell us what came of those interviews, the pages that might explain what the FBI investigated and what they concluded, are the exact pages that have gone missing from the public database. The DOJ is now reviewing whether those files were wrongly withheld. Both parties in Congress are investigating, and Trump, through a White House spokesperson, says he has been totally exonerated. But exonerated people don't have 50 missing pages in a transparency release. Exonerated people don't have their Justice Department quietly removing and restoring files in the middle of the night. And exonerated people don't have bipartisan congressional investigations into why the evidence that might clear them is being hidden from the public. The files do not prove guilt, but they prove beyond any reasonable doubt that Trump's story about Jeffrey Epstein does not add up. And the full truth is still buried somewhere in the millions of pages that have not yet seen the light of day. Stay locked in. More files are coming. More names are coming. This story is far from over.